And then what you're going to want to do, you probably want to switch to gallery view. There you go.
Good.
Okay.
Terrific.
And you have your audio on. Okay. Your audio's on. So when you want to silence yourself so that you push mute, you unmute. I usually keep mute.
Push the mute. I don't see a mute button on mine.
It's the microphone. If
Not
you have
sure.
an iPad, it's on the top. It looks like a little microphone. It says mute.
Okay, gotcha. It comes and goes.
Welcome, Robert.
Hello.
Welcome
Can you-
aboard.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Good. Well, here I am, I think.
I am so impressed to have you on the same committee. I've been teaching understanding art, and you are.
Oh, that's yeah. Oh, good. Well, Carol and I are happy that we're in that book. Yeah. Well, terrific.
Robert, I saw that you were born in Bronxville in 1942.
That's right. I was. And, but I lived in Manhattan. We just had my doctor was in, my mother's doctor was in Sarah Lawrence Hospital in Bronxville.
My late husband was born in Lawrence Hospital in 1942 also.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yes.
Well, we have a friend here in town whose father was in the same class as my mother in New Rochelle High School.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
a lot of old ties here.
Mm-hmm. Well, you answered my question. Since you lived in Manhattan, I guess you wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet Andrew. So
No, probably not. I was a little young.
so was he.
No, I lived in actually Manhattan for the first 3 years of my life. Then we moved out to Yonkers, actually, right on the mountain.
That's where I moved from.
Oh yeah, from Yonkers. I lived right next to the Mount Vernon station on the Harlem line,
Mm-hmm.
right next to Sarah Lawrence University. I later found out.
Yep.
So I don't have much memory of that. I did grow up in New York till I was 12, and then I moved here to Florida. So,
Okay, well, we're going live. We'll have to continue this another time.
All right.
In an effort to maintain compliance with CDC and Pinellas County guidelines for social distancing and general public safety, the city has set up Zoom virtual meetings to facilitate the broadcasting of the Public Art Committee meetings and provide for public comments. My name is Joan Jennings. I'm the chair of the Public Art Committee, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is 2:00 on Tuesday, June 9th. Marissa, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Iwanu,
Here.
Mr. Meals,
Here.
Ms. Robinson,
Here.
Ms. Jennings,
Here.
Ms. Gregory,
Here.
Ms. Oberlander,
Here.
Mr. Stackhouse.
Here.
Well, we have a full committee, obviously a quorum, and welcome, Mr. Stackhouse. We look
Well-
forward to your participating with us.
Thank you. I look forward to it as well.
Okay, Mark, do we have any guests?
We have one guest in attendance.
Okay. Do we know who they are, or?
It says Costa, but I'm not sure if that would be Mr. Vaticiotis or somebody else. It just says, all that I see is Costa.
Okay. Okay, our next order of business is the approval of the meeting minutes from our May 26th meeting. I know that there were some amendments. Lucienne, I believe you had some substantive amendments.
I did.
Could you read the, your amendments, if you'd be so kind?
Sure. I think Marissa may have emailed these out, but under old business, the first paragraph I've amended to meet, to say, Ms. Robinson stated that the public safety building project was mentioned by one commissioner at the January 28th BOC meeting, and that there was no action taken by the BOC. She suggested that the public safety project be added to the Public Art Committee's master plan work session to be considered with everything else that may come into play. And then after the motion and second, that the public safety project be added to the Public Art Committee's master plan work session, period. That's on page 6. Shall I go
Okay.
on?
Yes, please. If there are any other substantive changes or?
Yes, on page 7, under new business, the protocol to secure BOC approval. Chair Jennings suggested the Public Art Committee create a project application form that can go before the BOC for approval before the committee takes on any new projects, and asked Ms. Robinson if she would like to be part of this process. Ms. R said yes, but she stated that the strongest opportunity for accord between the PAC and the Board of Commissioners is, I can't read my own writing. Pardon me. Strongest opportunity for accord between PAC and Board of Commissioners is the PAC developing a master plan that, when approved by the BOC, serves as a template. Every project would then not have to go back for approval. That was the extent of my comment.
Okay, do I hear, Marissa, I sent you some minor typos that were not substantive changes, just, spelling corrections. Are there any other comments from the committee about the amendments to the minutes? Okay, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Bill, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes accepted as amended. Marissa, you'll get us a copy of the amended minutes within a reasonable amount of time.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, now we're on old business. Further discussion of copyright issues. This was added to the agenda by one of the members, and I believe it was discussed at the May 26th meeting, and it was asked and answered. It's covered under Article 301.00 parenthesis A close parenthesis of the ordinance, that ownership of artwork lies with the city. But as City Attorney Trask indicated, everything is negotiable. So do we have any more comments on the copyright issue?
Yes, I do. I was reading over the guidelines, and it seemed to be kind of a conflict in that, in my mind. You may explain it better, but under on page 8 of the guidelines, public art qualities, it says all artwork should be unique and exist only in Tarpon Springs, and it goes on for other things. And then on page 24, under intellectual property and publicity rights, it says copyright. Subject to usage rights and license granted to the city hereunder, artists shall retain all 17 USC 106 copyrights and all original works of authorship produced under the agreement. So to me, that sounds like a conflict. So maybe somebody can explain.
Okay, well, Diane, this sounds like something for, it does sound, like they're not in sync. Maybe this is a question for Mr. Trask.
Okay. Mr. Trask is on vacation through the 12th, I believe. So I will bring that to his attention when he returns.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Michaela?
Since I brought up that topic, would it be okay if I talk to Mr. Trask? I had gotten a message from Diane that he's on vacation and she was going to let me know when he's back, but I would love to ask him about the nitty gritty of that because that was the topic that I was particularly interested in.
It's really not appropriate. Everything that we do would have to go through the city liaison. Keep in mind that Mr. Trask's hourly fees are not exactly something to be trifled with, and therefore everything has to be vetted through the city liaison. If every member of every committee had open access to them, it would just create, a chaotic situation where everybody would be, after him for decisions about every single item. So I would respectfully decline that request. Anybody else have any other thoughts on the matter? Okay, second is the illuminated art boxes. We are in the process of ordering 20 more of the 30 by 30 inch art boxes. Because the purchase amount exceeds our limit of $15,000, the purchase must first go out for competitive bids from the purchasing department, and those bids are out until June 12th. I sincerely doubt that we're going to get a competitive bid because these were custom-made items, but we have to abide by the purchasing regulations of the city. And as soon as, we get an approval from the purchasing department, it will go for final approval to the Board of Commissioners. Any other questions or comments? So it's in process, folks. We're going to get our art boxes down on the sponge docks.
Okay, I have a suggestion about that. I was wondering, since we were talking about having the art done by students, but since school is not in progress, and I don't know, when they'll be meeting in the schoolroom, so I was wondering if we could use the talents of our local artists until such time as the schools may be able to produce some art for it. I know, I'm involved in the Art Association, the Tarpon Springs Art Association, and that we have many, many very good artists there that could contribute some art for the art boxes until such time. And then, of course, they can be changed out at any time. And so I was just thinking that might be a good thing. And then when we receive our boxes, then we could go ahead and have art to put in them. And I did a walk along the docks the other day to check out the poles that the art boxes could be put on. And I counted there's over 20 boxes that would be available on the docks. Now, I also did a drive-by on the trail between Tarpon Ave and Martin Luther King. And I saw that there were at least 6 poles along that route that could possibly accommodate the art boxes. Okay. Okay.
Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Theo, how do you feel about that? Do you think that the students, or like the SPC students, would still be reachable, or do you think that going to the Art Association might be a good stop, backstop?
I would definitely agree, maybe reaching out to the association, because I do know that not many art classes are offered during the summer course, which is what we're in right now.
Mhm.
And a lot of the art classes, they will be mixed online and in class sessions, but the online parts don't start till October. So it would be a while until you can get some college art in there. I'm not sure about the high schools.
Mhm.
But definitely for substitutes, I think reaching out for the to the association would be a good idea.
Diane?
I think what we'd have to do is, and I'll check this out with our clerk of course, but I believe we have to put out a call to artists, and so that way, even the art association members, as well as our other local artists that aren't members, can participate.
Mhm. Right. Yes, Robert.
Sorry for being laid in on this, but I'm not as familiar with this project. Are the artists being paid for their contributions?
I don't think we've ever discussed any kind of compensation. If there is compensation, it would really be minimal. It's to bring you up to speed a little bit. We came up with the idea of having solar powered backlit illuminated art boxes created to create an illuminated art walk on the Hudson,
Right.
still in New York, on the along the sponge docks. And we have a prototype down there. I don't know whether you've seen it. It's on the pole right next to the sponge diver statue. But right now it has a lineup cut by our member Theo. And the purpose was to encourage young and student artists and, give them something to put on their resumes, give them something to, encourage their future endeavors. And so we could really use any medium. Diane, did you ever follow up with Jeff Davis about the medium that they used for Theo's piece in the art box?
Yes, it is a specialty paper, and his art director was going to send me the specs on it when we were ready to process some more.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Robert?
Can I just add something? I think that in the public art realm and in the art realm itself, I think even if it's a small amount, some kind of money for the artists to participate in this, to give them, it's important to pay artists. And artists are always getting asked to donate. Oh, that's good for publicity. It's all, we know. So you understand that. And, just any kind of money that could be budgeted for that. And like Diane said, if this were a call for artists, you could open it up to all of Pinellas County. And that would really be good for Tarpon Springs, in that you're including the rest of the county in the public art in Tarpon Springs itself. So you are going to get a broader reach of people who might want to do this. And I think you get what you pay for in a way. And just some, just some kind of gesture to somebody to if their work gets selected, to
right.
Instead of just the privilege of having us use their art.
Right.
Really,
well, the thing is, yeah, I'm sorry, we didn't say we weren't going to pay them, but it's just never really been discussed. Maybe this might be a good time to put something out on the table. What do most people feel would be an appropriate stipend or honorarium for use of someone's artwork in this?
Keeping in mind that there's 20 of them.
20 pieces. And what's the total budget for the project?
Well, there really isn't. The art box themselves are going to be costing us $16,000.
Yeah. Okay.
So and the idea of doing this too would be to change them out frequently. So, like we were talking about, doing more seasonal things for like December through the Epiphany. And, but, I agree that the artist should be paid. I'm just, I don't know what amount it should be.
Well, there's been certain occasions where $100 or something like that, or $50 even. I mean, it's something. I mean, you're gonna have people that have never been paid for a piece of art before in their life, and maybe made a living off of doing their art. You might get that kind of a reach in this. I mean, it's an interesting project to have these things on the light poles and being illuminated and having them rotate. Or not rotate, but being replaced. I think it's a good idea if you could budget in, say, $1,000, $2,000 to pay off, to pay who gets selected. It really makes it exciting for the people getting it, and it $50 or $100, $75, whatever you can work out. It's useful for everybody,
Right.
Some people it'd be a tube of paint, but other
Right.
people it'd be a whole paint set.
Right, Lucianne, you had.
I think $100 would be a minimum. Just throwing that out. I don't know how you feel, Theo. You've done our prototype. What seems fair to you?
Well, I do know when we have our art shows at the college, a lot of the students price their works when we have the option to sell between $50 and $100. That's usually like the base that students. So anywhere between there, I think closer to the high end would be more enticing for college students and high school students, especially.
Well, can I entertain a motion to pay the Art Box artists $100 for their images?
So move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, pass. So we'll be paying the artists $100 for their images.
Can I get a clarification here?
Certainly.
Am I supposed to be voting, or am I just
Well, we're
alternate?
kind of loosey-goosey here.
Okay.
Technically, the alternates don't have a vote, but we're a little more collegial. I think for something like this where we have a unanimous vote, I don't think it's an issue. But just as a point of order, the voting members are the 5 regular members, not the alternates.
Jaron, we probably ought to really take a look at how we want to use these boxes then too, to see what kind of timeframes and, maybe kind of lay out the year so that there's, some method to
Our madness.
how we're going to populate them.
Right. Yeah, there was talk of themes, thematic things like ocean images or things of that sort. Diane?
Just a suggestion, when we do the call to artists, it would be nice to be able to put in that call that where you've decided on the amount that they'll get paid, but maybe just how long that artwork will be up, and if there's a particular theme for, different times during the year, you can kind of specify that. So, I think that might be something that would be great to include, for people so that they know.
And people should. Oh, I'm sorry.
Trish, you were first, I think.
So does that mean that we have to put out a separate call to artists every time the artwork is changed?
Well, the thing is that, we could do it in such a way that, it gets out to, the appropriate sources. I don't think it's on a level where we have to go to cafe or some kind of elaborate, expensive, mechanism for putting out a call to artists. But, you know, we could put a little notice in the paper or something on campus, or, you know, get something to art teachers. Ms. Sheila?
Possibly Creative Pinellas would be a good way to get the word out. They've got a very viable mailing list. And I think if we're going to open it up to the entire county, then it would be very helpful if we also make an effort to include some people of color, because look at the makeup of our committee. And while Tarpon Springs is largely a white community, I think recent events have shown that if we include every aspect of our community, and I've looked at, we have a fair percentage of Latino, we have a fair percentage of African-American people in our community, that if that's reflected in the artwork, I think the community would probably embrace it even more.
That's a good point. The project was originally, you know, done to encourage, you know, Tarpon students and, you know, SPC students. But Robert's suggestion that we do an outreach to all of Pinellas County. I mean, how does everybody feel about that? Do people want to stay local, Trish?
I would prefer to stay local. Personally, yeah.
Okay,
I
Sheila?
like Pinellas. I thought that it's not too huge of an area.
Okay,
Especially
Lucienne?
since we plan.
I would encourage a broader reach.
Okay, Robert?
I think the nature of this, you will get a fair amount of people that are local, just because of the Pinellas College presence here. But having a more of a broader outreach, I think will refer a little bit more to what Michelle was talking about, is that representing the other aspects, the other races that are in this area, I think is very important. And when I read the history of Tarpon Springs, seems like African Americans were fairly prominent in the very beginnings, and especially in the fishing industry. And I don't see a lot of reference to that in any of the involvements in what you know of art about Tarpon Springs. And it would help deal with say a thematic thing about what's the early history of Tarpon Springs, and from all points of view, rather than from just the white point of view.
Well, since Diane asked for some ideas and outlines, maybe we can recreate that by asking some members of the committee to send her, sorry, Diane, a list of, you know, possible themes that we may be interested in exploring, and having her collate them. Because I think everybody's bringing up really good points. And, you know, if we are expanding our outreach, and I'm thinking in terms of maybe, you know, in the early part of next year, we do have, you know, Martin Luther King's birthday. We do have Women's Month. So there are a lot of things that we can connect to as themes for these art boxes. And, you know, certainly Trish used the Art Association and, you know, Creative Pinellas. You know, I'm just wondering whether this has enough of, you know, oomph, you know, to attract people, but I'm hoping it will. And, you know, I think it's something that we should, you know, definitely look into. So that's your homework, to send Diane a list of possible themes we could use for the art boxes. Robert?
I just wanted to emphasize Creative Pinellas. There's nothing that doesn't have enough oomph for them. They will see and help to sort of you know, elaborate on that oomph.
Right. Well, one of the things that we had discussed and was actually presented to the Board of Commissioners last year, and, you know, the committee's been in quite a bit of turmoil. We've had so much turnover that it's kind of fallen behind the boards. But one of the things that we were discussing doing was a statue of a Bahamian sponge diver. And, you know, there were some ideas, you know, floated around. It never got to the point where there was a call to artists, but, you know, I think I'd have to go back and look, but I think it was part of the projects that were approved by the BOC last year. Diane, do you have any recollection of whether that was approved or not?
I cannot remember. I can look back in the archives and see.
Right, because maybe that's something we should re-energize, especially given the times that we're in right now. You know, not that it's mattered, but it has been in the hopper for a year. So I think we should, you know, as I said, re-energize, you know, and maybe work on a call to artists for it. So maybe, you know, run it past the Board of Commissioners again, you know, and see whether they do indeed, because this would be a really major project, you know, to get, you know, a sculptor of some, you know, reputation to do a commissioned work. We're not talking about $100 anymore. Any feelings on that? Robert?
Yeah, well, just to do a bronze, it's going to cost way more than that. I mean, if you're going to do a bronze, and I imagine it should be life-size to sit in with the other collection of figurative bronzes you have in Tarpon Springs. So it needs to be co-equal that way. But
right.
I a little, you know, I think, is that a little too narrow though to just do a Bahamian sponge diver, or I don't know. I'm kind of leery of committees saying what they, you know, specifying a little too closely what they want.
Lucianne?
Robert is speaking to what I'm thinking too, in that there was a very close working relationship between the Bahamians, the Greeks, and the African Americans in the sponge industry and in other enterprises in town. So something that was more of a integrated, balanced, fuller picture rather than a narrow depiction of one character.
Well, yeah, the idea was there was a sentiment in the committee and in the community rather, that before we installed the naiads in the roundabout, they wanted to put 3 statues, and one was a Greek immigrant family, a Greek sponge diver, and a Bahamian sponge diver. So again, you know, it speaks to the history of Tarpon Springs. We already have the Greek sponge diver, and it would be a companion piece to that. It wouldn't be just sort of out there on its own. But, you know, any other, Robert?
Well, I'm just thinking a place is important. If it were near the Greek sponge diver, if it were sharing a pedestal with a Greek sponge diver, that would create questions. What's that Bahamian doing next to the Greek sponge diver on Dodecanese Avenue? Well, they are very closely related that way. So I think the fact that the placement, if I could see it if that was placed right there in that, because it's a very strong place for Dodecanese, and to put a Bahamian sponge diver there would really start to create that sense of story, even more so than sort of surrounding the naiads with it. I think.
Oh, no, it wouldn't. Yeah. No. This, I don't think you. The thing is, before the naiads were installed,
before that,
they wanted that triad in the roundabout before the naiads were. But the idea was to put it near the on the sponge docks, definitely.
I think a good thing about public art is when it very strongly can tell a story and tell many stories with a single object, and so you're going to have a lot of people referencing it in different ways, and you don't have to reference it the same way all the time. What it does is it creates questions, and that's really a great aspect of public art. Is why is this here?
Right. I was very intrigued to find out that none other than Winslow Homer had done figure studies on the Bahamian sponge divers in the Keys. So, you know, we've got some some precedent there to look at and, yes, Robert?
Just a sidebar, I know somebody who has business in the Bahamas, and they said there's a large Greek community in the Bahamas,
Mm-hmm,
and it's because of the sponge diving.
right,
So it goes both ways in a way.
yeah. Majila? You're muted.
Sorry about that. What I was curious about is, and I noticed the reference to the Bahamian sponge diver in the public art master plan we were reviewing, but is there a presumption from what you guys have been saying? It sounds like you're definitely logged into the idea that this is a representational, a figurative piece, not something that's more wide open, like it could be an abstract kind of concept or something, or more broad. And I was just curious whether or not that was something that had been decided way back when the discussion was up for it, or if we do a call for that particular kind of piece, if we even would entertain something other than representational bronze.
Well, we'll put out a call to artists and see what we got. I think, as I said, being a companion piece to the sponge diver statue, I think there was an assumption that it was going to be realistic, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And again, we have to take the temperature of the community on this.
How do you do that normally?
You ask them.
Okay. I didn't know if you have like certain news outlets that would put out stories about this kind of thing, or if we just randomly go visit with everybody we can talk to in Tarpon Springs as public art committee members, or, if there's some formal mechanism to ask them.
There's really no formal mechanism, but, I think we can, somehow find a way to poll the community and find out what they'd be interested in seeing. Robert?
Again, how about if you're going to do a call for artists, have a general cover story for that you publish in the local paper,
Mm-hmm.
or in the St. Pete Times, even as an extension of the call for artists.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine if this is going to be bigger budget, it's going to be a national search rather than a.
Right, exactly.
It can have so many of these have is an emphasis on we prefer somebody from the county, somebody local who understands, but that's not the only criteria.
Right.
So I think you can get it out to the public a little bit if it was a story in the press.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, any more discussion on any of this? Okay, so Diane, maybe we can get a draft of a call to artists out for both the art boxes and the Bahamian sponge diver statue, a draft, Lucianne?
Yes, just on the Bahamian sponge diver, I think this should flow into our discussion during the master plan workshop. That you are talking about a big project, and it would be the headline project, I assume, in the 5-year master plan. So I think we ought to have all of that out on the table before there is a call, because there are a lot of questions that have been raised. Do we want to introduce more contemporary, non-representational art into the community? I vote yes. But there is so much more to that discussion, I think.
Right, Diane?
I think, to do a call to artists, for the art boxes is one thing. That's pretty, that's pretty easy. But I think something as big as this sculpture is going to take a little bit more. I think you all need to vet it a little bit more. I would agree with that. So you can give me the details of what you want to put in it,
Right. No,
and everything.
I agree with both of you, but I just don't want this to get lost in the, like it has for the last few months. So I just want to keep it on our radar screen, even if we do a super, super rough draft that just says call to artists, and then, as I said, just keep hammering away. And of
Okay.
course, we'll be submitting the themes too, to Diane to collate to, even for the call to artists for the art boxes. Okay, any other discussion on this, ideas?
Should we talk a little bit about the programming of the art boxes before we do a call to artists? To
Sure.
just kind of identify, how we're going to use them over the period of a year. Because I don't know
Okay.
I don't know that I've heard that we've definitively come up with a plan for how we're going to utilize them.
Right. Well, first we have to anticipate their delivery and installation. So Diane, what do you think we're looking at here? I mean, we're not even getting the purchase order even looked at until, the 12th.
I'll check with the company and see how quickly they can do them. I think they were talking about shipping them in groups of 10. So I believe he mentioned that they could put them together pretty quickly, but in his mind and your mind, I'm not sure, what that is. So let me find out and I can get that for you before your workshop.
Okay. Do you think we're realistically looking at October?
I would think so.
Okay. Shall we take that as a tentative start date? Comments, anyone?
Well, we should know what's going on with COVID-19 a little bit more around then.
Yeah, well, I don't, hopefully this won't be affected by the virus. But,
Well-
who knows? Bill, does that work for you? We could, get a, start for something in October?
Yeah, that sounds good. I think we just need to talk about how we want to program that because it's an ongoing, it's not just a piece of art that we're going to have, created. It's going to be a constant
Right,
turnover. So we have to
Right.
figure out what that looks like timing wise, calendar, themes, and probably some targets. We're going
right.
to target the elementary school, middle school, high school. That takes some planning and some coordination with the educational.
Right. Well, I know that the Board of Commissioners indicated that they did want some kind of holiday themed, art down there for like December, as I said, through Epiphany, and possibly a little bit later. So we could probably pencil that in. And so we're looking at, shall we do this quarterly? Semi-annually, Machila?
How about every 2 months? Would 6
No,
times a year be too often?
Yeah, I think so. And it would start to get, even at $100 a pop, it would start to get expensive.
Yeah, I think,
How does, I'm sorry,
excuse me, I
Trish?
think quarterly would be good and it could be seasonal, with different themes.
Robert?
How easy are these to switch out? I mean, do you have to go up on the pole to do it? Do you have to take it down from the pole? Does the city do this? Do they have trucks that do this, like the crew that puts up Christmas decorations and things? What's the logistics of all this? I mean,
In a word, yes.
and I mean, I think if it's quarterly, you're almost going to be having a perpetual kind of thing. If you're going to have, I don't know how long it takes to do one over the period of time, but 20 or so, or however many you're fixing. So that's a tricky thing. I mean, you like to have as much sort of variation as much as you can within the year, but what's the logistics of putting it all up places?
Well, it will be done by the city, and I'm not quite sure how they did it, but they Diane, you weren't there when they installed it, were you? Because I wasn't either. I didn't even know when it was going up. I guess we could find out from Tom
Mhm.
and see if we can find out exactly what was involved with it. Okay,
All right,
so
so they,
are we looking at quarterly? How many people would like to see it quarterly? A show of hands? Okay, semi-annually? 1, 2. So it looks like we're between quarterly and semi-annually.
how about a third?
Okay, question. Okay, question, if it's semi-annually, how would you work in themes like Christmas and,
Well,
you
I
know,
think,
things we're talking about?
I think December would be a creature of its own.
If you cycle it to where it goes from, say, October to March or something like that, however 6 months is, it would carry that sort of seasonal aspect of it. And doesn't all have to be Christmas. Some of, it could be winter. And this is public money, isn't it?
Not really. It's
Not-
it's public art. It's a public art fund. It's not taxpayer dollars.
Okay, okay. So I was just worrying about, just concerned about religious imagery. And
Lucianne?
Along those same lines, there are a lot of diverse ethnic holidays that fall between October and March. So I think it could generally be a festival holiday, broader description than the Yuletide.
Mhm. Right. How would people feel about starting something in January? And that would take us through, again, a lot of different, ethnic festivals in through the summer, which is when you get a decline in the street population on the sponge docks, and then kicking it up again maybe in August through December. How does that sit with everybody? If we block out December and the beginning of January for holiday, seasonal, whatever you want to call it, which again is the request of the Board of Commissioners. So we're kind of, that's something we're have to seriously consider. And then from January to maybe August, and then again from September or July, January to July, and August through December for the next grouping. Any feelings on that, Robert?
I don't see any problem with that. What you do is you get maximum exposure because you have a lot of the snowbirds here at that time, and they get to see the transfer over to the secondary images. So
Right. Yeah, that was my thinking also.
Yeah, so that would give you the most exposure for those projects.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Michaela?
Just to clarify, would be December and January, and then February to July, and then August to November, because December would once again be the holiday thing, right?
Well, December, yeah, exactly. But it would probably be starting in January, like after Epiphany.
So we wouldn't be,
Trish?
so we wouldn't be doing anything in October, between October and December, we wouldn't be.
Well, not if we run it. Yes, we would. If we ran it from August to October, going, in future. We might not be able to do it this year because of when we actually get them and install them. So if we do August through November as the first set, And then we've got December to Epiphany. And then we've got January to July. Lucianne?
I think we're on a slippery slope devoting so much to the Christmas season, even though that is Hanukkah and may include other holidays.
Well, it's holiday seasonal. It's not Christmas per se. That's what we've been saying. You know, I know we don't get winter in Tarpon Springs, but there is snow place. I mean, you know, we can make an obeisance to a few snowflakes, but.
Yeah, winter festival season or something like that. I think we have to be careful how we brand it and describe it in our call.
Well, I think between the 20 art boxes too, we should be able to get a good variety of images. And, you know, but just have, you know, there was a suggestion made at the Board of Commissioners also about using, you know, vintage images. In other words, take it out of the original art bailiwick, so to speak, for just that, you know, that particular thing, like, you know, old fashioned greeting cards or things of that sort.
That really doesn't conform to our purpose as promoting original art.
Agreed. I'm just telling you what, you know, what was said at the, you know, the Board of Commissioners. But so we've got, I hope we have a consensus, and I'll take a show of hands again. December to January through the Epiphany for some kind of winter holiday theme. Theo?
The only concern I have, if we're going to be doing this for like high school and college students, if you have the period from August to October, school doesn't really start until till August. So then it's going to be a difficulty of getting students in high school and college to get the art ready for August. If, you know, there's that conflicting like month or two, you also have to figure out how long you want to give them notice for, so that they can actually have enough time to create something presentable. That's the other issue we have to think about.
Right. Sheila?
I think that's a valid concern, but what we could possibly do is reach out to the teachers, like the SPC art program, for example. And for instance, if we're working with them, to reach out to them in the fall semester, that their students would submit things for the next period that we have. So if we have 3 periods where we're going to be showing these art boxes, most of the time, even when they have charrettes or other student shows, they're at the end of the term anyway. So then the students could use these pieces and they're not needing to resubmit them possibly to their teacher for grading. I know some art teachers have a policy of you can submit it once and get a grade, and then if you want to improve the work, you can work it on some more and submit it again at the end of the semester. So if we do it after the end of the semester, then it would be able to be displayed without any issues that they might need to show it to their teacher again. Does that make any sense?
Well, let me rein us in here for a minute, because I find that the team of horses is going in a few different directions. On one hand, we're talking about reaching out for the entire Pinellas County through Creative Pinellas, using the Art Association, and then now we're making allowances for school schedules. Which way do you want to take it, folks? We can't have it both ways. Do we want to do the county outreach, or do we want to stick with student art? At least for we have to make a decision, at least for the first go round. Trish?
I made the suggestion about using the Art Association or local artists to get the project going, so that we would have some to start when we get the boxes. Okay, that was my reason. After that, we could put it out to the students.
Right. Bill, how do you feel about this? You wanted does this fit your idea of a viable plan to at least get some kind of kickoff project going so we can.
Yeah,
at least-
kickoff is fine. I think we just need to look at the programming and figure out, I think a number of folks have mentioned this. You've got to be up front and say, we're looking for this theme during this next period of time and give people an opportunity to be creative. So I think we just have to be organized and be out in front of it, probably 6 months to a year, being able to tell people this is what we're looking for and, giving them the opportunity to create.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't want to see us react to these art boxes. I want to see a program where we're out in front of it. That's all.
okay. Okay, so we're going to start with a little more limited scope and then open it up once the boxes are up and running. Does that make sense to everybody? Anybody?
What exactly are you meaning by limited scope? Not, I agree with Patricia that since the students won't be meeting in classes for a while, starting out with the local community, all of Pinellas County potentially, and then potentially after the first set of boxes, maybe saying, okay, this call is this theme and it's for elementary school students. And then this call is for this theme and it's for high school students. This call is for this theme and it's for college students, or something that specific, so that we do have a plan like what Bill is explaining, that, we can be very specific in saying, this is what we're looking for and this is the target audience we're trying to reach in terms of artists. Does that work? Does that mean what you
Well,
mean by
this is the
limited
first
scope?
I've heard of restricting a call to a specific age group.
Okay, if not, that's fine. I just,
It's, as I said, I'm looking at my notes and they're all over the place.
Mhm.
I tend to agree with Trish on this one. I think we need some kind of jumping off point, and, using the, art association might be a good place to start. And then we can open it up for all the, upcoming, boxes. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm trying to be, sensible and reasonable here. Any comments, anyone? Anyone have any other ideas, suggestions? I don't want to push this through, if people have strong objections to it.
I think if we get it kicked off, it'll be a good way to actually show that, we're doing the next project, we're getting the art up there. And then as we come to more of a solid idea of what the schedule is going to be, then we can do the call to artists, and then we can, incorporate them into the school systems where the students have the whole period, like from August through October. Those students who are will be submitting for like December and January, so that they have enough time. So as long as we get it started, I think we can figure that out, and how to get when to get out the call to artists versus when the art's going to be submitted by, and then when it's up. So I think that actually is a good, it works out in that sense.
Yes, yeah, Theo, I agree with you. So shall we say we'll start a kickoff effort with the Tarpon Springs Art Association and then open it up for everything after that, starting with the holiday winter theme and then going into, the January to July and then August to October blocks.
So the first block, Joan, would be October, optimistically, through January. Is that correct?
Well, it would be, hopefully it'll be sooner than that, but, worst case scenario, October through December for the holiday, winter art. Robert?
I'm all for however you want to kick it off, however you want to start this thing. It's a short period, and you have it's a new program, a new plan for things. I really believe that what you want to do when you do these kind of things is start off with a bang, not with a little thing. But if it takes this kind of a start to get it going, if you're your second call, I mean, your next call for artists was countywide and just open to anybody, I think you're going to get more diversity. You'll get maybe more South County people involved in it. And that is something that in unifying the county arts, so we're not north and south. I lived 15 years in South Pinellas, and I know there's a kind of divide between north and South Pinellas, and it takes. I think Creative Pinellas is doing a great job in trying to represent all of Pinellas, and I think they'll be a good partner in this. But I'm hesitant about the way you're talking about opening it up just by limiting it to people here, and but I really hope that you can open it up full county without any restrictions the next time around.
Yeah, Lucienne, you seem unhappy with the December, January thematic art.
The discussion satisfies me.
Okay, well, okay, so on one hand, we have the big splash call to artists to all of Pinellas County, and the other way is to start locally with the Tarpon Springs Art Association. Okay, how many people feel that we should do an outreach to all of Pinellas? Okay, and how many feel that we should start locally? Okay, we kind of have how do we have a split? 1, 2, 3. Bill, did you vote?
I didn't, because I can see merits in both directions. You know, you got to get it kicked off. And I think if we're organized enough, the biggest thing I want to make sure is that we've got a plan so that we don't start something and then have it kind of languish. Okay. I want to make it so that we've got a plan and we're moving forward, and you can demonstrate that, hey, we've got our act together and we're ready to go with this. So if we're ready to go with it and blow it out to Pinellas, that's fine. If we're going to take a couple baby steps and get up and running, then we probably ought to keep it local. And, you know, if we're going to trip, let's just let us trip, you know, amongst family.
Amongst friends.
Okay.
Right.
Amongst friends.
Right.
To kick things off, I'd be happy to change my vote to keeping it in Tarpon for the first round.
Okay. All right, so let's do a local call and for the kickoff. And Diane, you and I will run hard on the progress of the boxes, and we'll keep the committee apprised of, you know, when it looks like they might be arriving and installed. Okay.
Will do.
All right. Marissa, are there any emails on this topic?
We did not receive any emails on this topic.
Mark, are there any public comments on this topic? Okay, well, let's assume there isn't.
We do not
Okay.
have any raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, this is something that I've been in discussion with a few people, and as you know, we have been really blocked, frustrated, and you know, just stymied by, you know, with the mural process, and because of all of the liability insurance requirements. And what I'd like to do is entertain a discussion on shifting the focus of PAC-sponsored murals back to city-owned properties as discussed in the previous BOC meetings. I think that there are a lot of issues about putting these murals on private property. If you've driven around Tarpon, you'll notice that there have been tons of murals that already have been painted on buildings by the owners and business owners. I think that if you look at these murals that people have paid for out of their pockets, there might be some resentment to some people who are getting public art funds to pay for murals on their buildings. And by painting on city property, we don't have any issues with owner maintenance or removals if the buildings are sold or renovated. You know, I think we should beautify city property first. Commissioner Carr in a prior BOC meeting has provided a request list of various localities for murals. And I think we should look at prioritizing them. The golf course, the beach recycling area wall, the Craig Park ball wall rather, and some other issues. How does everyone feel about that? Trish? You're muted.
I'm sorry, my phone was ringing, so I muted it. Yeah, so does this mean that you want to discontinue the Artist Alley project?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically. I mean, we've just been stymied and, you know, as I said, you drive around Tarpon Springs and it seems like every time you turn around, there's another mural on the wall. And I don't know what the wisdom would be of, you know, painting on private property when we should really be concentrating on city-owned property for the murals. Lucianne?
Do we still have the same issues of liability insurance and workman's comp when we're contracting for something on a public building? You said last meeting that the city manager was going to look into insurance options. Is there any status on that?
Well, just before the meeting, I got some good news. Okay. Depending on the fees, artists are considered on city property are considered minor independent contractors. So we can pay them a fee and pay them for their materials. There is an upper limit of payment, but you know, it's at least we can get some, you know, some things started, you know, rather than constantly beating our heads against the wall with this, you know, this liability issue. Trish?
So would the cost of the insurance to the artist, would that be figured in what we pay them in their
There wouldn't
artist?
be a cost.
There would be no cost for the artist at all.
No,
The city in fact insures them, is that correct?
Okay.
right. Up to a certain fee
Hey,
point.
makes sense to me. Okay. At least we
Okay,
can get
Sheila?
started.
Do we have a list of these properties? Because when we looked into murals before I was a member of the committee, one of the things that you and Jules had told me way back then was that if an artist wants to do a mural, then they have to find their own property and approve it with the owner in order to do the project. And so there was no list of, hey, check out these buildings. And I just wondered, do we have one now? And could we, committee members can see the list of what buildings are you proposing to do murals on?
Diane, I believe that when Paramitha, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, presented all, yes, presented the GIS maps to us. There are maps of all the city-owned properties. And I think that Lucianne asked for them to be at our workshop. Right,
But
Lucianne?
yes, but Bill's counter suggestion, which I think is correct, is that we spend this first session developing an outline and a vision before we start getting specific with the GIS. And,
Okay.
and I would add to this discussion if one of the things we need as material is to know which public buildings are available.
Okay. Diane, is there any way to generate a list? I know that, I think there was a BOC workshop. I think Townsend Tarapani was addressed the public art. That was a while back. And I think there was another BOC meeting where Commissioner Carr outlined a whole bunch of different public art spaces for murals.
I believe that's correct. However, I'm gonna have to work on trying to get, a list, this date and time that of
Right.
places that would be available. But,
Okay.
so I'll
If
work
our-
on that and maybe have that ready for you for your July meeting, because it sounds like you're gonna be spending time on your master plan at the workshop. Is that correct?
That's correct. Everybody bring their sleeping bags. Okay, so that'll be up for further discussion. Marissa, are there any emails?
It tastes really good.
We did not receive any emails on this topic.
Mark, any public comments?
We have no raised hands at this time.
Okay. We're on to item 3, new business, and that's the agenda for the workshop Monday. As you all know, we have a Zoom meeting for Monday, June 15th at 2 p.m. to discuss the master plan and general guidelines. These were worked on extensively last June, but because of loss of members and other considerations, everything came to a halt. Diane, I believe, has sent all of the documents as they evolved from 2007 to the present. So we'll be working on those in detail on the 15th. Lucianne, do you have any comments or? No, Bill, anyone?
I sent some thoughts to Diane regarding maybe a path forward and how we kind of address and work our way through that, and at least initializing the process. So those were my thoughts.
Okay. Okay, Diane?
I have received a response from everybody on the workshop except for Lucianne, I believe. Did you send? Right. Okay. So our deadline was the 12th by 5 p.m. if possible. So I'll compile all those, and Robert is brand new, so we've sent him a lot of information. I'm not sure he's gonna be able to get his ready by then, but if you do, Robert, go ahead and send it my way.
I think that's Robert's backup materials behind him in the cases.
Yeah, there you go.
Is
But as soon as I receive Lucianne's, I'll compile everybody's and get that out to you before your workshop, so y'all can
Okay.
review it.
Okay, great. Okay, Marissa, any emails on this?
We did not receive any emails on this topic.
Mark, any public comments? Okay.
We do not have any raised hands at this time.
Thank you, Mark. I think that we have a couple of items from the agenda, Diane, that we've added. I think we'll just go through our notes.
For what?
Additional agenda items for the July meeting.
I don't have any.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about the call to artists for the art boxes and a
Oh,
few other.
okay. All right.
I can send you some if you'd like from my rather scribbled notes here. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't sure what you were referring to, so,
Okay, I'm down to closing procedures.
okay.
Oh, are there any city announcements? Oh, we have, I wanted to give an update on the Elizabeth Indianos mural. She's been working in the Cultural Center on her historic mural. Mark, can you just flip up the 2 images that we got from her?
Give me 1 second.
Sure.
So to show this.
Here's the first image that we received. And this is the other.
Okay. All right, so work is progressing and, you know, I think there's been some advantage to her in, you know, the quarantine because she's able to work alone in the building and just, you know, do her painting. Okay, our next regular meeting is July 14th, 2020. And as we've said before, the workshop is going to be Monday, the 15th at 2 o'clock. It's June 15th. And do I hear a motion to adjourn, or are there any other comments, questions? Motion to adjourn. Trish,
I make a motion that we adjourn.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Bill, meeting is adjourned at 3:12 p.m. Thank you all. See you on the 15th.